All right, I got a question. Is this a tornado or not? Well, there's a couple different factors that you can look at to determine if something is a tornado or something else. All right, based off of that video, what do you think? Still not sure? All right, a couple things to look for. First off, you want to look for rotation, obviously. You also want to look for upward rising motion and something in the clouds that indicates connection. Looking at that, you don't really see that much rotation. The clouds don't really seem to be rotating either. Not really that much upward rising motion. So this is actually a gustnado. But I did catch a few tornadoes at least throughout the 2023 season. How many? We start the tornado count on the chase day of May 4th, 2023. The first time that I would actually see a tornado on a storm chase. I went all the way past Wichita Falls towards Bellevue, Texas, ended up underneath this beast.
Oh, what do we got up here?
One of those days.
What do we got up here?
But it's gonna improve. I'm trying to discuss with them. I think that maybe our booster or battery
Is
needs
that
to be
it right
switched.
there? It looks like that's it right there.
Good news is you didn't miss anything.
That's the rotation.
Now, if you speed up these, which I'm going to do a lot in this video, you'll be able to make out the rotation a lot easier because, of course, it's going faster. It's more clear, more readily apparent. You speed up this, and you can see that there is rotation in that funnel. It's not a scud cloud. It's not just cool air being brought in. You stop it, take a little screenshot of the video, you can see that funnel. But make it even more visible, obviously, you can increase the contrast and get a clearer look at what we have, and that is a tornado. It wasn't condensed all the way to the ground, but that's not required for it to be a tornado. As long as ground circulation is there, we can add it to the count. So, after May 4th, I'm at 1. And that brings us on to May 11th, my first Central Oklahoma tornado chase.
I don't know. It's pretty close to cold before the tornado drop. It's about that good.
Which was a pretty apt observation for what was about to happen. Now, unfortunately, because I had been using my iPad to record videos, and its memory just suddenly gave out during the chase, I had to switch on the fly to using my phone. And of course, it coincided with the first observed tornado warning for this supercell. Look right there, you can see the beginning of the descending funnel that would later plant a short-lived pair of tornadoes. And of course, where was I when that happened? Right there. That was my position when the first tornado touched down. I was sitting at an intersection. We gotta get out of here. Even with the increased contrast, second tornado isn't really visible through the rain. Not on that video shot, at least. Nonetheless, the two largely unimpressive tornadoes are added to my tornado count for the year, bringing me to a total of 3 after May 11th. Another tornado warning right for this area. Let's check radar scope in a little bit to see what it's Brings us to May 18th, a classic structure day. I pause right here just to take in the absolute photogenic beauty of this slow moving supercell. As it moved along at a pace of less than 15 miles per hour, it kept on changing its form repeatedly until it got a lot closer to us and developed this amazing wall cloud.
Is that it?
Now, the most interesting recording that I got during this day is this other wall cloud. About 20 minutes later, after the supercell had moved further east, you look along and you see multiple funnels and lowerings that really, really teased as if they were about to put down a tornado. And this right here, you see rain wrapping around the lower ring. Increase the contrast to try to get a better idea of what you're looking at. And obviously, you can see that lower ring with rotation and the rain wrapping around right there almost seems to have produced a small tornado. But of course, I wasn't documenting past then. I stopped the camera for a short little bit. So I'm going to introduce a new category for tornado count, the tornado possible category. Similar in nature to the NWS warning tag that they put on severe thunderstorms that aren't tornado warned officially, they'll put tornado possible. I didn't want to completely rule out that a tornado had happened, but I also didn't want to say it was a tornado confirmed. So there we go. And that brings us to probably my favorite chase day of 2023, May 26th, otherwise known by those in the community as Encino Day. The quality of the views and documentation we got from this chase day pretty much unparalleled for storm chasing in New Mexico. And this supercell that developed near Encino was the champion of them all. As we got close to it, it got stronger and stronger, developing this RFD cut, indicating a strengthening updraft. And what could emerge from a strengthening updraft? Well, this.
Behind the ring? Oh, that's, yeah.
Contrast enhanced and fast forwarded, you can see the details of this amazing tornado, including the subvortices, ground circulation, and the broad scale rotation of this large tornado. If you look closely, that RFD is racing around the near side of the tornado, and eventually it would be associated with its occlusion. After its occlusion, the end of that tornado, this weird, almost seeming to be spinning the wrong way wall cloud formed closer to my position.
It really looks like it wants to do something.
It wouldn't take long before I found out what exactly was going on. Here's a stabilized, contrast enhanced, fast forwarded look at this tornado. Instead of spinning left to right, this tornado spun the opposite direction, making it a rare anti-cyclonic tornado. And with this chase, my tornado total would go from this to this. 5 observed tornadoes with 1 additional tornado possible in my first month of chasing, as this chase day would coincide with 4 weeks since the first time I went to go chase. What would the rest of 2023 bring for me? Well, let's find out. After an amazing, unforgettable, prolific, and successful first month of my rookie season of storm chasing, I was now into June. And June, little did I know, was a month that would test my strength, grit, and potential as a storm chaser. This first one bringing me to the Raton Mesa. Oh, that's looking amazing. And very quickly, the intensity of storm chasing in June would show itself. Rapid condensation of vorticity above your head is a sign that you need to move. Quickly, the storm became outflow dominant, which is unfavorable for tornado genesis. Interestingly, you can see anticyclonic rotation as the storm started to fall apart. Same kind of rotation that spawned the second tornado at Encino. This brings me on to my first moderate risk chase. Moderate risk is a 4 out of 5 on the Storm Prediction Center's convective outlook risk scale. A pretty high level chase, though not the peak of risk that one can go for. It's still the highest risk that I've ever chased. This is June 15th.
Looks like a tornado. There's a funnel descended from it. I'm quite certain that's a tornado. This is a very weird storm. It's so weird. It looks more like a shelf. It's potentially just gustnado.
With dust being lofted up and it being underneath the rain-free base of a maturing supercell, you would think tornado. Strong outflow winds simultaneous to a powerful building updraft had me absolutely perplexed as to what I was looking at exactly.
It seems a lot more like gustnado than tornado. But that almost looks like it's being updrafted. I'm not sure. That looks like it's going up. That looks like a tornado.
I'm inclined to say it was a weak, short-lived tornado, but the strong outflow winds make me feel like that's probably not true.
Alright, let's get some more information. See what the hell's happening. Alright, I'm still super confused about what's happening here.
Despite the confusion, I still found the storm to be entirely beautiful.
I'm gonna put it to time-lapse mode, and I might have to start blasting.
And this time lapse is one of my favorites that I've ever taken, and it shows something interesting. These dirt swirls on the rear flank of the storm seem like outflow until this little bit of rotation for a short time associated with this dust rising up towards it. About an hour later from that last shot, the tail end Charlie of the storm complex became tornado warned, but it outran me. Before June 15th, my storm chase tornado totals were 5 observed and 1 tornado possible. But after June 15th, and seeing the first that I would consider a possible tornado, and the second one later on that I would consider a brief observed tornado, my totals were 6 observed, 2 tornado possible. This brings us to June 17th, Beaver Day. Another remarkable chase day of 2023, but not in the same way that Encino Day was. Whereas Encino Day was characterized by relatively slow-moving, photogenic storms of amazing beauty, Beaver Day was characterized by these sturdy, fast-moving storms ahead of a derecho threat. And this first big supercell that initiated in the middle of the Oklahoma Panhandle was quick to show us the power that we were about to witness on this day. It quickly became tornado warned, and in fact, if you look closely here, you'll be able to see that it actually produced a small uncondensed tornado. With contrast enhancement, you can see there ground circulation underneath the rain-free base, confirming the presence of a small tornado. Now, as this storm pressed onwards, getting stronger and messier, I got one final look at it before switching off to a different storm. which was a bold move considering that I was looking at another potential small, brief, uncondensed tornado. Regardless, the storm that I had switched towards was not unimpressive in its own right. In fact, you can see the vorticity being ingested into the storm as it reorganized and made a right turn, indicating that it was strengthening. In fact, the vorticity as I made a hook slice of the storm was again above my head. The absolute waterfall of precipitation you see behind the supercell was the derecho threat beginning to materialize. But the supercell was not done yet, as you can see this funnel reaching out towards the ground as the wall cloud of the supercell began to strengthen. With the derecho behind it and the updraft still strengthening, the hook almost wrapped around entirely on itself. And in fast forward, you can see it continue to consolidate until it would eventually become shrouded in rain and generate the EF1 that would strike Laverne. With the hook, as I mentioned, almost wanting to wrap up on itself entirely. Chasers wild enough and locals unfortunate enough to be in proximity after it had condensed fully behind the rain wrapping confirmed its presence in Laverne. And where did that leave me after it had passed? It left me dealing with the hurricane force outflow driven winds of the derecho and these gustnados. The most impressive gustnados I've ever seen. Not tornadoes, they're not associated with an updraft, but they do spin and they can be damaging. So after such a crazy, intense chase, what were we looking at statistics-wise? Well, coming into the day, I was at 6 observed tornadoes and 2 possible tornadoes. After the day, I was at 8 observed tornadoes and 4 possible, with the 2 observed of the day being the EFU near Turpin and the beginning of the Laverne EF1, with the possible tornadoes being that weird funnel that I saw in Beaver, as well as that dusty broad rotation that was also near Turpin. This brings me to a day that I'd very, very much rather forget. I love storm chasing, so why would there be a day that I'd really not want to think about? Well, you can see these supercells initiating in the distance beautiful photogenic storms that produced many tornadoes, including this storm that, not long after this footage, would produce a tornado. There was also a supercell that produced 27 tornadoes on its own. I actually intercepted that supercell. This supercell. Of course, I got to it after it had stopped producing. And despite bold and admittedly stupid chase tactics to try to make up for the missed tornadoes, I wouldn't catch one despite chasing for a double-digit amount of hours that day. Tree damage. Shredded up. June was testing me. When I was able to get on storms, they were difficult to chase, intense debacles. And when I wasn't on the storms, they were producing historical, beautiful tornado events. So, on June 22nd, I decided to try to gain some redemption while making my way back towards home, as a 5% tornado chance popped up in northeastern New Mexico, and I decided to try to drive up into a mesocyclone. Well, without my knowledge, my best friend's family home was being struck by a tornado where I had been just 3 hours prior.
Oh, lost a branch.
So, while a PDS warned tornado was striking the place that I had slept just the night before, and whose warning box included where my parents live, I had to settle for this cute little cold air funnel. If I thought that missing the historic tornado family produced by the Akron supercell the day before was bad enough, missing the Highlands Ranch EF1 pushed me to be even more bold. And right here, it slightly paid off. If you look closely, a tiny, short-lived bird fart tornado is produced under this rain-free base. But as quickly as it's produced, it dissipates.
I don't want to get bored.
And an RFD full of hail wraps around, heading my way. For what seemed like the 100th time in June, condensed vorticity above my head scared the crap out of me. But after getting away from that storm, I was rewarded with this amazing, amazing view of another one in the distance. And despite intercepting another hail beast supercell a couple hours later, that little bird fart tornado that I caught was the best I was going to do. Going into the chase day, I was at 8 observed tornadoes and 4 possible. I only went up to 9 observed and 4 possible, with the footage in the background being from the 4th of July, another chase that I did in Colorado, which gave me no tornadoes. This brings us to the only other chase that I did in July 15th, a 2% tornado risk day in eastern New Mexico, which felt like a breath of fresh air. You look in the distance there, you see an ominous looking darkened lowering. And right there, almost looks like a giant tornado. But honestly, I couldn't confirm it then. And unfortunately, the only footage that I could find of this specific moment was from a Twitch stream short that I made for YouTube. Nonetheless, you can see how close the condensation's getting to the ground, with dirt swirling around it as the RFD seems to be wrapping around the circulation.
Legitimately might produce in the next couple minutes.
In fast motion, you can see the upward rising motion, what appears to be some rotation, and of course, that dirt swirling in the ground. Unfortunately, the pixelation doesn't help.
This region of the storm is threatening. I'm hitting the point where I'd honestly be surprised if this isn't causing ground circulation somewhere.
Later on, I saw what I was pretty sure was a tornado, but now I'm entirely certain was not. Why am I so certain of that? Well, because by this point, the storm was falling apart and was outflow dominant, meaning that anything that I saw near the ground was just being pushed out by the cold outflow winds. So going into that chase, I had 9 observed tornadoes and 4 possible. That chase only brought me up by 1 additional tornado possible, the weird spinner reaching out at I-40. I didn't count the one before it that may have been tornado possible because it seemed more likely to just be a heavy precipitation dump. Nonetheless, here in this footage, I'm intercepting Tropical Storm Hillary, and that right there that you just saw, I still feel so overwhelmed by the possibilities of what it could be. Is it a tropical tornado in the southwest? Or was it just dust being lofted up in a way that gave the illusion of tornado? Well, pressing onwards, avoiding the flooding as well as I could, and intercepting low-topped supercells like this one, I did my best to try to find another potential tropical tornado, which again, in the desert, is an absurd proposition. This low-top supercell right here almost seemed to want to do something, but never did. Anyways, Tropical Storm Hillary and the intercept I did of it was more of an exciting, unique novelty chase than anything else. That chase brought me from 9 observed tornadoes and 5 possible to 9 observed and 6 possible. Anyways, the chase footage you're watching here is from September 13th, and this little spinner occurred on top of Sandia Peak. Later on in the day, I went to the opposite side of the Albuquerque metro area towards Belen and Socorro. I saw this weird cloud formation on the rear flank of a large, messy supercell moving east over the mountains, and at first thought maybe it was a tornado, but looking back at the footage, I really just can't say that it was. Though it appeared to have been rotating, it wasn't consolidated in the way that a tornado is. Anyways, here's a really awesome time lapse that I still love from that day. There was no change to the tornado count from that day, despite having really photogenic and awesome storms close to home. And to be honest, this chase that I'm showing you right here from September 15th didn't produce any tornadoes for me either, but it gave me one of the best time lapses that I've ever gotten. It would seem my 2023 storm chasing season was quickly winding down. In the first week of October, I would get one more. Sudden and intense as these winds appear to have been, they were likely rear flank downdraft, not tornadic. Though the storm, with high contrast, you can make out a little bit of rotation. And though it probably wasn't tornadic, it indicates that the storm was a maturing supercell. And as the day continued on, the storm mode would change from that favorable for tornadoes to a more linear mode that would just produce rain and severe wind. But for one last time in 2023, I would get to be underneath the ragged, rain-free base of strengthening supercell. And while that's not a tornado, and the RFD that I got caught in earlier wasn't itself a tornado either, something about this last chase was a really, really pleasant send-off for the year. And so, that brings me to the tornado totals for 2023, my rookie season. So with 9 observed tornadoes and 6 additional tornadoes possible, here's the list of the observed ones and the list of the possible ones. By damage ratings, an EF1 was the strongest tornado that I actually saw this year. But I'd say for the amount of tornadoes that I saw as a rookie, it was a pretty good year. Anyways, that's all for now. Until spring 2024 brings on a whole new set of tornado chases and all that comes with it. Thanks for watching.